Hello everybody, and welcome to Some Patches Required, a show where we hope to educate and entertain you on the ever-turbulent games industry. As always, I am one of your hosts, Aaron.
And I'm your other host, Zach.
And also, as always, we'd like to give you a huge thanks for listening. Just on the off chance this is your first episode, we're super happy you jumped on board, and if you're back for another dabble, welcome back. Glad you enjoyed whatever your first episode was enough. But yes, if you would not all mind sharing the show with a friend, a bitter enemy, an acquaintance, a lover, that would actually be a hugely helpful way for us to grow the show, as we don't pay for advertising or anything like that at all. Leaving us a review is also a fantastic way of helping get the word out, and anything you can do helps. So thank you very much for that, of course.
And this week, we are fortunate enough to have one of my friends, Josh Bowlby, who is an active member of the Austin game development community, on the show with us today. So we'll get to that eventually, but some of his bona fides, to steal a word from Aaron here, is that he has a history being a UI UX designer at not only Virtuix currently, but also Airship Syndicate, and just has a history of being interested in that design space. So our discussion today focuses a lot on UI UX design, community building, and management when it comes to game development. And then we also talk a little bit about the recent layoffs and how to provide support to your friends who might be impacted. And also, candidly, just getting into the industry and how to network a little bit. We cover some of that. But that's sort of the TLDR of the discussion for the most part. I don't think I missed anything, Aaron.
No, I don't believe so. But it was a really cool conversation to have, and I was super happy that Josh was able to give some time to chat with us. I think you'll really enjoy the conversation.
And without further ado, here's the sound. And as promised, we have Josh here, someone I know very well locally. He is a senior UI UX designer at Virtuix. Josh, how are you doing today on this wonderful Thursday? I keep forgetting what day it is this week.
I've been like that. I've been one day ahead all week. I'm doing incredible, actually. It's been a quick week, but it's I'm pretty stoked on life right now.
Stoked on life.
Well, that's fantastic.
Positive. Yeah.
Yes.
No, we like that. We like that.
Is that the sequel to High on Life?
That's true. And I also appreciate, I don't know about you, Aaron, but I appreciate when you ask someone how they're doing and they give you a different response than just good. Add some flavor to life.
I usually I'm doing terrible, actually. And people are like, oh no. And I'm like, yeah, do you have a minute? And they're like, wait, I wasn't ready to get that far into this.
Yeah, I didn't actually care. I didn't actually want to know.
Just opening people up to really uncomfortable emotional conversations that they're definitely not close enough with you to have.
Exactly.
That's perfect. I like that kind of cringe.
I'm here for that. That's what I bring the cringe.
I like it.
Before we dive into the UI UX thing, I have to ask, are either of you familiar with Nathan For You?
Oh man, not in forever. Yeah, but yeah, I do remember him.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of thing that feeds me. It's so awkward and painful to watch. Or it's I Think You Should Leave.
Oh,
that's also a really good one.
Yeah.
That's
Tim Robinson is a hero.
Yeah.
My kind of cringe. I love it. So good.
Oh, good.
Well, so I don't tangent off on that. Thank you for coming on, Josh. We really appreciate you taking some time. As I said, you're a UI UX designer. Do you care just kind of elaborating for people that may not know what exactly that is and what exactly your job is? Expand on that a little bit. What is it that you do?
Yeah, so for the TLDR, I make things work and I make them look pretty, or I make them look functional, and then I make them pretty. But in the long term of things, we assess and do some research on the best way for a user to use a product based on, the needs of the user. That's the UX part. We want to make sure their experience is, exceptional and it's a fun experience. It's easy to use, mostly easy to use. And then we also want to make that, good looking. We want to make sure that the buttons are in the right place, that they make sense, they're color coded to like primary and secondary thing. There is a science to it, but yeah. So basically, the first half of that UX research, understanding the user, and then UI is making sure the user is pleased with what it looks like and how it functions and that kind of thing. They are two very different camps of thought, but they also work together in tandem.
Yeah, it does feel to me a lot of the time using some software, I would say largely outside of the game space, on some devices that maybe don't get like the support that they maybe need, where the actual experience side of it seems to have been, let's say, written a smaller check.
Yeah, that's common. A lot of people will look for UI designers and they think that the UI designer will have that UX experience or vice versa. And there will be those spots that are missed because they're often paired together so much, which I say that, funny enough, being a UX/UI designer, a lot of people will condense these UX design and UI design into one thing and expect both outcomes to be amazing based on somebody who might just know UI or somebody who might just know UX design. So that's where you're going to see that one of those sides are usually going to fail.
I think the interesting thing about design in general is I remember I was reading this book, and it's very possible that you've read it, Josh. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but the book was talking about just design in general and like functionality. And the thing that really stuck out to me is that you don't notice good design. You notice bad design, but you don't notice good design, at least in like physical medium. Do you find that to be the case with, working with games and software, that's the same thing, that a good design is really something that you just kind of go through without even thinking about it?
I think that's in all things, honestly. I don't think it's just in design. Well, granted, video games is a lot of that is design. But I think whenever you see feedback from somebody, in Steam or whatever, it's always like, oh, I hated that you couldn't wall jump, but they had some other really cool mechanic that you're not even complimenting on because you're so, caught up on what's not good. But I think there's also something amazing about that as well, is like if you don't have anything to say about it because it's functioning right, I think that's like a great success. Like it doesn't stand out as a sore thumb. So it's this weird conundrum of like, I want people to recognize the work that I'm doing, but I also kind of want it to be a chameleon of all things, so it all functions together as one piece rather than its own individuals. Because if you have something, in a game and an app that just sticks out as a bad design, then it's going to kind of crumble the things around it.
Yeah, for sure. That's one thing that games have, where if all of the pieces aren't working together towards the same goal, they can take each other down pretty quickly. It's a tricky Jenga tower to build.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Like a Jenga tower, it's a bunch of little blocks. And if you pull one of those out, you could pull a couple of them out and still keep it standing. But if you pull out the wrong brick, it's going to fall.
I think the interesting thing about at least UI in games that I always really appreciate is when the game world gives a reason for the UI to be the way it is. I always love that.
You mean like diegetic UI?
Yeah. When there's like a reason for there to, think back to like Halo,
Dead Space.
I guess, originally. Or Dead Space. Like the UI being part of the world, I think is a really, really cool thing. Or like, I'm trying to think of a good example, and of course they escape me right now. But like, this isn't necessarily UI, but it's like game mechanics that are, they're a game mechanic, but they're like brought into the lore of the world. I feel like those two things kind of are hand in hand, and I always really appreciate that.
Like the wind directionality function in Ghost of Tsushima is a pretty decent example.
That was an amazing way to like guide a player somewhere without being like this large beaming green light that you wouldn't see in feudal Japan.
Yeah, or the BioShock arrow, that kind of thing.
I just learned feudal Japan didn't have giant bioluminescent lights that,
Sorry to break your
in the
heart.
right direction. Yeah, I
Not if Zack Snyder has anything to say about it.
I'm still offended. So this is not at all about anything that we're talking about here, Josh, but for some reason your comment about feudal Japan just reminds me, our first season, we were not as just about games. We were trying to do some other stuff too, just because, constantly coming up with content sometimes is hard. And we brought another podcast on to watch Tokyo Drift with us. And it really, I'm offended on Japan's part for actual history, which was that drifting was invented in not ancient Japan, but older Japan. And they say it in the movie. And for some reason, it's such a I don't know how to explain it. Aaron, do you remember I was talking about being offended by it. I looked it up and it's oh no, actually drifting was in fact air quotes invented in Japan. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, how do you feel about pizza? Yeah, because pizza was the whole concept of pizza was made in Japan.
What?
Well, hot shit.
Oh damn.
Okay, all right. Let me explain a little bit. It's not the pizza itself, but there were these ingredients that were made into something that then later on, at least this is something I read a while back. Your people who listen to this can totally disagree and find out information and say I'm wrong, and that's okay, and hate me for life. That's cool. Leave it on my wall. But yeah, it's something I read a long time ago.
Huh. I am seeing. Was pizza made in pizza made its first appearance in? Oh wait, no. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you're right on that one. Maybe
I could be wrong. You can cut that out if you want
I thought I was about to read that after World War II, something, but I think it's probably been around before that.
I'm reading 997. The year 997.
997. Pizza's been around that long. Damn, crazy.
Cavemen used to eat it.
Yeah.
Cavemen.
That's actually where the Bigfoot pizza came from.
This guy.
Well, on the note of
I hate that I just did that into a microphone.
Hey, it probably sounds good, Aaron. Honestly, if we're being honest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if we're going back to game design, not Tokyo drifting, not pizza or Bigfoot's foot. What game? Well, actually, how do I want to phrase this? I'm not gonna ask that question. I'll ask that question later. Have you always known that you were interested in UX, UI design? What was your path to kind of finding out that was an area of interest? I did do some extra creeping, so it seems like you've generally been interested in design since college. But what's kind of your story with that? I'm just always interested to learn how people find their way through games or just their interests in general.
Yeah, so the origin story. So actually, funny enough, when I was younger, I played a lot of video games like any other teenager.
Nerd.
In the 90s to early 2000s. You're right. Okay.
I play WoW now actively, so I can't really talk.
Oof. Anyways, no. So when I was younger, I always had there was a little interest in it. There wasn't really a term for it at the time. But I've always had some kind of anything artsy, film was a huge passion of mine. Photography was a huge passion. And like you said, I did a lot of design as well. I actually, when I graduated high school, I had already had set up to go for game design. Then I right before, I was signed up and everything. All I needed to do was literally show up to the school and start the program. But things drastically changed in my life, and it took a religious route after high school. I won't get too much into that, but so I was like, all right, I kind of want to change this. I don't know if game design is what I want to do. And as the time I was working at Zoomies, and I was like, I still really wanted to do something in either film or photography or some kind of design. And I had a friend of mine. He was like, hey, I go to this school and I learn all of that stuff. I learned that 3D animation, 3D modeling, all this stuff. And I was like, sick. That sounds like exactly what I want to do. So I took a curve away from the game routes and went more onto, just media in general and, multidisciplinary and that side of things. And as I got further into that side of things, I never thought like it would really cross over with game design because I didn't really understand how they differ or how they connected. But later on, after going through college and after doing some work in marketing and stuff like that, I started seeing how I was a cinematographer and a graphic designer mostly. I did that for 10 years plus, and I started realizing we were being shifted out, very competitive, very saturated. And I noticed that UX UI design was definitely on the rise. It's got a great, secure career path forward. Everybody needs a UX UI designer, one or the other. And so I was like, you know what? This seems good. I did a boot camp for a year. Best decision I have ever made. I learned more in that boot camp than I did in my 5 years in school. And yeah, I went from there. I said, I don't know what it's going to be, if it's going to be tech or games. But after the boot camp, I moved to Austin. I still had my marketing job. I was there for way longer than I needed to be. And then they laid me off like 3 months after moving here. And I was like, crap. Well, if I'm going to make a big career change and move, I need to do it now. And I need to do what I want to do. And so, I met up with John Henderson, a local legend here in Austin. He took me to all the events, and I got into games as soon as I could in 2 months, and then that's all she wrote.
Yeah, no, if you're in the Austin area and you don't know who John Henderson is, he's an absolutely fantastic human being that
incredible.
You should know. I mean, he's such a caring, just like genuinely great guy. Also, funnily enough, he shot me a ping on LinkedIn yesterday, Josh, because somehow I was not like connected with him on LinkedIn, and he just pinged me. He's like, we've known each other for years, and somehow this is just now happening. And I was like,
it'd be like
I could have sworn I was connected, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, no. Well, one, I'm glad to have you in the local community, and now that I work a little bit with Airship, I know you're no longer with that team, but the people I know that are still there seem pretty cool. So unless you tell me that's not true, I'm going to keep believing it.
No, everybody there, I still really love everybody there. There's some people you don't gel with, but that's just work, But no, the team's awesome. I still really, love what they're doing and what they have got going on. The president and CEO, Joe and Ryan, are fantastic people. Just unfortunate things come up, and that's just the games industry, things. I had somebody tell me this, and this is going to be depressing. When I first started getting into the games industry, somebody said, when you get your first games job, start saving up for your next layoff. And not to make that dark, but it kind of is like that.
No, I mean, candidly, especially in light of, not that this wasn't always to some degree true, but in light of the events of the last couple of years in the games industry, I feel like that's pretty sound advice, despite the fact that it sounds, a little bit bleak.
Yeah, it's real, and I'm a realist, so when I talk about these things, I try to be as real as I can, because, there's no need to sugarcoat it, especially with how cutthroat this industry can be.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the interesting thing is that the games industry, at least in my head, like I look at a lot of it and I'm like, here's all these problems, right? With like layoffs and some of the instability and da-da-da-da-da. But the people you meet, and obviously everybody's got bad cookies, right? Whatever. But on average, I feel like the people that you meet in the video game industry are some of the most creative, passionate, kind, welcoming people that you can meet in general. And that's why I ultimately want to remain in the space, be in the space, is just because I think that's really fulfilling. But I do think it's really interesting. There's like that juxtaposition of kind of like depressingness in a way, but then like the community is really great at the same time. I just have always thought that's a little weird, but maybe that's just entertainment in general. I don't know.
Well, there's something to be said about that. Like, so the picture is that the community is incredible. This is one of the greatest communities I've ever been a part of, and believe me, I've been part of some really crappy, shitty, communities. And this is the best you'll ever find. The camaraderie, the people of support. I remember I met up with a friend of mine, Alan. Actually, I didn't. I just met him. Literally after 10, 15 minutes of talking to him, he found out I was unemployed. He goes, "Hey, if you see anything at Zynga, let me know. I'll put your application in immediately." So everybody wants to see each other succeed, and then whenever you're down on your luck, people want to be there with you. And even if you're, misery loves company, so there's going to be others that are in that position, and they like. I remember when I got laid off at Airship. My cohort of 12 people who got laid off. We started a Discord, and we just sat there and sent each other job postings, checked out each other's resumes, helped hype each other up. And that's just how it worked. It's incredible. I think if we're going to get into the subject at all, I think it's definitely up top where they just are so disconnected from things. And I'll just leave it there for now, unless we get into it later. I think that it's just, if you want to get a part of a really good community, games is definitely the greatest community.
And I think,
yeah, I mean, I was going to say, even though no, you're good. I was going to say, even though I'm not actively in the development scene or anything like that, my experiences, even just through the conference associate program at GDC, have shown me just how unbelievably supportive and helpful the people involved in the actual making of games can be.
Yeah.
There's such even in the face of profound adversity, there's such a kindness and a resilience and a giving, caring nature to almost everybody I've met that it's hard to leave that environment and go work elsewhere where that sensibility isn't present with your peers.
Yeah.
Because the juxtaposition is shocking, honestly.
I feel like a ton of it too is just people wanting to do or be part of the thing that they are part of. I feel, because I used to be, I don't know if I've told you at any of the Game Dev Beer Nights, Josh, but I used to be in cybersecurity. And just know, like, they pay well. It's a very stable industry, generally speaking. It's only going to get more needed as we continue to, become more tied to technology, software, machines, all that. But it was so boring. Nothing about it was exciting at all. And in, just going from that and the projects that I was working on with partners and customers to what I'm doing now, it's just so much more interesting. People are more willing to share, excited to share and talk about what they're doing. And I think that's just a night and day difference. Before we go too far away from this note, though, I did want to grab your opinion because I'm sure you see it because I see it on LinkedIn. But what do you think is honestly the best way to effectively support peers in the games industry with the amount of layoffs that's going on right now? Because I'm blanking on his name. I feel really bad, but I know there's that one community organizer on LinkedIn who I think works at Tencent, and he's got this whole breakdown of resources for if you get unemployed. I know that I've seen you a few times just say,
Amir.
Hey, if you need some, Amir, exactly. That's who it is. I know I've seen you just say hey, if you need a producer, reach out to me. I know some solid people. In your experience, what are kind of your thoughts around actual supportive ways of getting people help that you think work?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, because the other thing, so you said the producer thing, which I posted a couple of days ago. That right now is the hardest position to get right now because nobody's needing producers right now. Producers and QA are usually the first to go at a studio, and usually the mass thing. So it really depends on that as well as what positions are there. But in general, I think it's really just reaching out, saying, hey, what's going on? How can I help? And being intentional with people, because that's really what it comes down to. It's being there for people. I think that's the first thing you can do. And if that's uncomfortable for you, then, making sure that you're sharing people's posts when they're hey, I'm looking for this, kind of position. Does anybody know? I mean, the great thing about LinkedIn is that we're all connected by the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? If this person knows this person, there's always going to be somebody out there looking for something. And so I think being able to just post those posts, even making your own post, if you're unemployed, if you're listening to this and you're unemployed, like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, outline your skills. Like, I saw a girl the other day. It was amazing. She couldn't reach out to an individual for a job because of just the way that their profiles, set up. They couldn't directly message them. So they just they were talking about the position, and they're like, hey, I'm tagging you here because I can't message you. Would love to talk to you. And I was like, whoa, that was bold. But like, the guy was like, yeah, absolutely. We're going to check this out on Monday morning. Like, that stuff was cool. But as far as support, sorry, I kind of went off there. As far as support,
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, like cold reach out to people. Like, people are so welcoming, and if they're not, they're usually introverts, or you got to think about all these hiring managers and recruiters. Like, they're going through so much of this. Like, it's hard to reach out to them individually. So if they're not getting back to you, we could talk about this later, because I've been talking to my own boss about hiring and what that looks like. It's been very interesting. But anyways, the support, share people's posts, be on LinkedIn. First and foremost, be on LinkedIn. Share posts, interacting with posts, and just, like I said, just be there for people. Like, whatever capacity you can be. I know that's uncomfortable with some, but yeah, just, that's what everybody's like, oh, how do you make things work on LinkedIn? It's like, just be there,
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, being present is about half the battle with most of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously being genuine. I feel like most of the time people can tell if you're being saccharine or insincere.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I can see that, and it's of course the thing that I struggle with the most in terms of LinkedIn. I have one, I'm just never on it.
That's what happens. They're like, oh, well, what do I post? Like, you don't always have to post things, just share things. And like, maybe add a note, like, read it first and foremost. Don't just share it because you just want to share things. Like, read the post and then like share it, and then add a thought like, oh man, I really think this is very insightful. You should check this out. The other thing that, I've been seeing too, which is really cool, and one of my coworkers, Pranchu is an amazing producer. He's just an amazing guy all around. As soon as we got laid off, one of the first things he did was he made a post on LinkedIn, and he tagged all of us that got laid off from that job and about our skills, because he worked with us individually as a producer. He oversaw a lot of our projects, so he was able to speak on that. And sometimes you can't, just explain how they are as a person and then what they are able to do. But it was really awesome. Like, I've seen a couple other companies do this now, like where unfortunately we had to close, or unfortunately we had to do some reorganization. But these are some people that you should definitely check out because they're so talented, and this, that, and the other. And that was like powerful. People see that and they're like, wow. Not only, and I'm not saying do this for clout, obviously. But like, it was definitely, like you said, you have to make sure you're being genuine about it, because like if people see you uplifting others, that's a good character trait to have. And
well, people don't want to be around someone that brings negativity to your workspace in general,
right.
And I actually think. And I guess I'd be kind of curious to get both of your thoughts on this to some degree, but I have the one thing I would recommend against doing, at least it doesn't read well to me, is I have some people, because, obviously there's been layoffs industry-wide, but specifically at Unity, and there's some people that I used to work with, and I see some people make some really depressing, like, for lack of a better word, desperate sounding LinkedIn posts with pretty frequent frequency. And I would say, don't do that.
No.
Try to be positive, even if it's hard. But generally, I would try to avoid like this kind of like desperate, sad kind of posting on LinkedIn, just because I don't think it reads well. And I've never been a recruiter. That's not an occupation that I desire, but I don't know. I don't think that that's the best approach to it. I think trying to remain positive, maybe make some fun at the situation in some kind of unique way that catches eyes. But, yeah.
Yeah, if you're feeling that, no, if you feel that way, I mean, just take some time, to yourself, relax. And somebody told me this as soon as I lost my job, was like, hey, take a week. Just take a week if you can. Obviously, sometimes that's easier said than done, but like, take a week, reflect on things, and just kind of, center yourself, take that time, and then come back with just a fresh perspective. Like, For me, I don't. This is pretty rough. But for me, up until my layoff, I was having nightmares about being laid off. That's like one of my biggest fears of it happening. And then when I woke up that morning, my boss was like, "Hey, can you get in this Discord room?" And I was like, "Uh-oh." And I get into it, and I see somebody I've never seen, or I never have meetings with, and I knew exactly what it was for. And I was like, "Yep, I was waiting for this." And weirdly enough, after I got off that call, I felt kind of liberated. I don't know, like I was like ready, I was like, okay, all right, on to the next thing. Like I don't know, like, and that's definitely a personality thing. Like I understand that's not everybody, but once you try to like reflect on that, and kind of like you said, like don't come across as desperate, because like that just shows that you can't move on. That you kind of have a sour, like a negative kind of way of looking at things or dealing with things. And that's not going to come across well to, a future employer or somebody who's going to work with you, and not to be a fake about it. Like you don't have to be fake positive about it. Like, yeah, it sucks. Shit sucks. Like, but you can talk about other things. I started posting about my band because I was like, you know what? I don't want to post about jobs all the time. Not everybody wants to see that all the time, people, personality above everything else, but that's a different conversation.
Well, yeah. Also, like if you're talking about games, like what the games LinkedIn discourse is very different than I think if you're in another industry. You can be a little bit more expressive, I think, in the games industry. Sometimes not for the best. I've seen some LinkedIn's turning into a little dicey in some ways, but anyway, sorry, Aaron, I think you're going to say something.
No, I was going to relate that to your story of being laid off actually reminds me a fair amount of when I was laid off. Again, not from a games industry job, but it was my first professional writing gig. And, I'd worked there for about 2 years, and I got looped into a Zoom call at a very weird time. And I was like, I think I know what's going on. And, afterwards, again, just kind of a personality thing, all I could really do about it was just laugh. Repeatedly, but at no point was I particularly tempted to make sappy posts on especially LinkedIn, just because I don't even think that sort of thing reads well on Facebook, and that's what Facebook is for, is
I would
people
agree.
who just want to get attention for whatever, it's I don't think that is an appealing perspective to take. It's fine to share what's going on in your life.
Right.
And it's fine to be honest about how you're feeling about that within reason. But the minute it takes on a self-pitying sort of tone or a desperation of its own, or, you're coming at it from a position other than, let's on to the next thing. I'm ready to take it going, hit the ground running, I think is a phrase that actual humans use. And, stuff that's, self-pitying or far too revealing, perhaps, maybe not for a professional networking site, probably for your Tumblr. Or your own diary. Actually, how about that? Not every thought that we have needs to be shared with the entire world for the rest of time. You can keep a diary or talk to your mom or your girlfriend or your wife or whatever. Like this is a
rant waiting to happen right here. This is a rant waiting.
Oh, no. No longer waiting.
You know what? Social media needs to go down with the rent. No, I was kidding.
But I mean, kind of. My point being, there's a venue for that sort of thing, and I don't think it's probably LinkedIn.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is super important too is don't post how angry you are about it. Like,
yeah,
if you're going to be angry offline. Like that's not a. But one thing I learned this is embarrassing. This is a fun, embarrassing story for me. One thing I learned very quickly is how small the industry is and how connected it is. I remember one of my really good friends, Michael Blackard, incredible human being, one of my favorite people I've ever had a chance to work with, and just a blast of sunshine in every room he walks into. I remember I won't say what game it was, but we were in our chat for work, and I was like, I'm not a fan of this game. I think it was bad, and it should feel bad. And it gets so quiet and slack. And I was like, somebody finally was like, yeah, Michael worked on that. And I was like, you mean the old ones, right? And they're like, no. And I was like, no, I'm so sorry. I was like, I felt so bad. And it was one of those like things where it's like, wow, like, and not to say that I talk shit a lot or anything. It just happened to be a topic. But yeah, it was just one of those things where I was like, man, this industry is really small when you get to, when you start getting into it. And so like, if you start, being angry, like, this company, unless they did something wrongful, like some of the lawsuits that were happening at bigger companies a few years ago, I'm not going to name any names, but there's obviously that stuff that's going on, or had gone on. But like, if it's just like, man, this sucks, I got laid off, you can post about that. That's what I did. I was like, hey, it finally hit me. I got laid off. It sucks, but I'm really I was trying to be encouraging. I was like, yeah, I'm really stoked for the future of Wayfinder, and then move on. Don't soak in it.
Well, the crazy
it benefits
thing,
nobody.
The crazy thing with a lot of that too, and since I'm not directly in the development space right now, I'm just like supporting studios from the server hosting side. I don't see as much of it, but I know a lot of people were talking about how, where all these layoffs are happening, but there's a very decent chance that they're going to overfire, and then they'll probably need to hire some people back. And it may not be the same people, but, for the roles and whatever. So I know a few people that have gotten laid off and then they are back in literally like 2 months or 3 months.
Back to the same company?
For Unity. Yeah. Like, so they get, they were laid off and then they're, figuring stuff out. And they end up back like a month later and you just see them in the office and you're like, oh, like, hey. But to your point of not getting angry, like, if you were to blow up about that, like, you can say goodbye to that opportunity depending on like where your anger is targeted. So,
right.
Yeah, no, you definitely need to be careful. And I also think it's funny because I think this was 2 months ago at the Game Dev Beer Night. You introduced me to somebody that is an animator on Rocket League. I can't remember his name. I feel really bad. He's a very funny dude. Oh, that's right. You said Lee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you introduced me to Lee. And Aaron, do you remember Bree Holshoe, who went to OU? Or do you know of her?
Yes, I do.
So Bree Holshoe, who went to our college for game dev, is the producer for Lee. So I was talking with Lee about random stuff, and somehow I mentioned this person that I know loosely. She graduated before us, but like because of the college connection, I knew who this person was. And he's like, "Oh, Bree Holshoe's my producer." And one of the things at some point is I might want to end up getting into production. So I like had mentioned something, but like I'm happy where I'm at right now. And he's like, you should apply for this producer role. Like Bree needs an associate producer. And anyway, it was like a whole funny thing of like, my God, to your point, what a small world we all live in.
Dude, I hear stuff like that all the time, or like that you'll end up running into previous coworkers at another job, like I've seen that. They're like, oh yeah, I worked with like I've seen people walk into Airship and they were like somebody that they worked with at like 2 or 3 studios ago, and they're like, oh my God, it's so and so. Like, oh, I'm so excited to work for you. I didn't know you worked here. Or like, there's always something. Or like I even say, when I was working at Airship, it's like, oh, you work with blank, blank, and blank. And I was like, yep. And they're like, yeah, I used to work with them and they're freaking awesome. And like even my lead at Airship, Billy Garrettson, his one of the Allen guy that I mentioned earlier, his sister and Billy were like best friends in college, and that's how they know each other. And like it's so crazy how that stuff works out. Like it's one big circle is what it is. So no, it's just really cool. It's really cool, and also you got to be careful.
Don't be a dick to people.
Yes,
it's a good rule of thumb.
Rule of thumb. Be a dick.
Always.
Well, on the we talked a little bit around the Game Dev Beer Night. I don't know if you know this, and anyone that might be listening in Austin, but I've actually been working to try and get the Unity developer meetup started up again in Austin. Because I've been very interested in trying to get more involved in the local community. And so I feel like you and I are perhaps similar on that. And I'm just kind of curious, like, is that something that you're actively like trying to kind of grow? Like, what is your I have a feeling that you're interested in like growing the games community or just being part of some, larger component of it. Because obviously, there's just attending the events, but actually being like a co-host and co-organizer of it is a little bit different. So I'm just kind of curious, like, where your interest with that came from, if it's just like the love of the space or I don't know. I'm going to stop this question now so I don't ramble.
And if you guys wouldn't maybe also mind contextualizing what these events are for people who may not be familiar with this type of meetup or anything like that.
Yeah, I can
that
share.
might be useful.
I can share what mine is, and then we can jump in it from there. So Austin Game Dev Beer Night. That's right there. That's what it is. It's in Austin. It's game devs, and we drink beer. But no, really, it's just a bunch of game devs in the area, or even people who are interested in game dev. A lot of students that are maybe even in college, working towards game dev, and you don't have to drink or anything like that. But we meet at a brewery. That's why it's a game dev beer night. And we just sit there and socialize. Like you can network, you can just talk to people, you can make new friends. That's really what it's for. It's just to be more connected as a community, and it's a safe place for people to ask questions or share what they're working on. Even if you're a solo dev, like that's always fun. And there are other things that we've tried to do in the past as well, but that's the main thing that I co-host with John Henderson. And for me, it's more about giving back to what it's given to me. And to your question is that, I definitely, I'm from Florida originally, and there was no really networking opportunities out there for anything. And I'm a pretty introverted person. So when I moved here, I was like, I want to get involved into some kind of community that, gets me out of my comfort zone, that I can, kind of give to. And they originally started actually with a group here called, Austin Digital Jobs, ADJ on Facebook. Definitely, if you're trying to get into tech and you're in Austin, definitely check them out. They're great. Great group of people. Lonnie is just an incredible person. But they do a tech meetup, so it's people from IBM, people from Google, Apple. They're just it's kind of a hodgepodge of different people. And that was the first event I went to, and it was at a brewery, and we just sat there and met people. Converse, and we would meet once a month, and it was awesome. And so it's actually kind of the similar structure of the Game Dev Beer Night, but just a different audience. So when John had helped me out, I went to all of his events. Like when I met John, going back to that a little bit, he said, I asked Lonnie at the tech event, I was like, hey, do you know anybody at the studio? And she's like, no, I don't know anybody there anymore, but you should talk to John. And I talked to John, and we got on a phone call, and he goes, all right, well, then you're going to come to every event that I go to. And I was like, cool, down. And like literally like that weekend, there was an event. If you know Donald, can't think of his last name. He runs the Austin Game Makers. And that's, if I could stop real quick, Austin Game Makers is also an incredible group of people. Just Austin in general is just an incredible place for game dev. But they had an event during South by, and they said, it's a fake it till you make it. So it was a bunch of industry people who got on stage and talked about moments where they faked it until they made it, and within their career or how they got there, or yada yada yada. But I just kept going, and I was like, man, this is such a kind of what we talked about earlier. It's just such an accepting group of people, and I was like, I want to be a part of this. I want to give back to this. I want to invest in this. And so John was doing the beer nights. He had another thing that he was doing, VGMU. I cannot remember the acronym. What it means. It was like video game something.
I don't. Was it a music meetup? I know there's an audio.
No, it wasn't a music. It was. He would have like speakers come, and they would talk about things that they've done or things that they're doing, and it was pretty cool. But it ended up fizzling out. But he had asked. He's like, hey, I could use some help with some graphic stuff and co-hosting, things getting kind of big, and would you be a part of that? And I said, absolutely. So definitely been a big thing for me being a part of that. I don't know if that answers that question, but there you go.
Well, it was a good answer regardless.
I can be a little long-winded about it.
No, I wouldn't say that qualifies as long-winded. Listen to, we have hours and hours of audio evidence of my long-winded nature. Trust me, this one doesn't rank.
I feel like I'm missing out now, Aaron.
Oh, man, it's all still on the internet.
Unfortunately. Just kidding. There's some that's not on the internet. So
there's some that's definitely not on the internet, and probably never will be.
We're sparing everyone from having to ultimately suffer. Well, I think I'm looking at the timer here. I want to give you some time to talk about, some potentially non-game related stuff that you could be interested in sharing with both Aaron and I, but also anybody else listening. We like to typically close some of the interview sections down, or we always close. I don't know why I'm phrasing this in a weird way, just by asking a very typical question of for people that aren't in industry, what is your biggest piece of advice to them? Whether that's breaking into the industry or when they get into the industry, something you would say, what do you wish you could tell your younger self?
You.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man, I love this.
I guess it doesn't need to be games related.
No.
I guess.
This will apply to everything. Man, I love this because I answer this question probably once a week at least to somebody in my DMs. But honestly, the biggest thing I could say is absolutely network, show your work, and just be willing. And that's just a TLDR. I think one of the most valuable things is networking. The more people more people you're friend, and don't force it. I do these things called portfolio posse. This is another thing John Henderson puts on. He puts them on 2 times a year. They're for students and people who are trying to break in or, trying to get a review of their portfolios or their resume to be updated so they can get to wherever they're going. There's a lot of, different systems out there that help with this, but this one, I had this woman come up to me and she goes, I went to a game dev beer night, but it was, this, that, and I feel like I was on edge. And I was like, well, I said, run a scenario through, how would you greet me at an event? And I'm sorry, I'm going more deep into this than the question, but
no, this is good.
Okay.
This is good.
Okay. But she's like, I was like, let's role play this. And she, the way that she had brought it up, she said, hi, my name is, such and such. And she said, and I was like, oh, what do you got going on this weekend? And she kind of was doing a good job, and then she was instantly went into, well, I'm going to be working on my portfolio at a coffee shop, and I was like, that's boring. I don't want to hear about that. And I think a lot of people go to these networking events trying to push themselves, they feel like they have to prove themselves, but you're there just to make friends. That if you're there to just make friends, you're going to be so much better off. It'll take the tension off your shoulders, unless you're, you social anxiety. I get that. That's harder to deal with. But realistically, just be there and be yourself, and you can walk into any conversation. That's kind of what it's for, and just listen if you want or contribute, and that's the best way that you can get to where you want to go. I can't stress that enough. Just meet people in that network. They always say you are the people that you keep around, and if you keep around those professionals that you want to be or the profession that you want to be in, you're going to be successful in that way. I find a mentor or something too. That's always good. You can look for mentors. Don't be too afraid to put your resume out there. Keep it simple. A lot of people will spend days, weeks, years on their resume and it's not ready yet. It's no, dude, just get it evaluated, make the fixes, and just push it out there. And I could talk days on resume stuff. But yeah, that's the thing. Just put your work out there, show your work. There's a great book by, I can't think of his name. I can see the book from here, but I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see anything.
It's all good.
I think his name is, I can't remember, but it's Show Your Work. It's a great book. It's an easy read. It maybe take you an hour tops. It's so good. I think that's something if you're afraid of showing off what you're doing, just because you don't feel like it lives up. Like I know for creatives, if you're going creative route, we are so critical about our work. We're more critical than anybody will ever be about our work. You just got to get comfortable with it. So anyways, long story short, network, get that resume done. Don't spend more than a week, and show your work and just be yourself.
I love it.
And I think it's funny.
Welcome
we kind of hit on this.
Talk.
We hit on this with another friend who had similar comments to you. And what I said when we were talking with her is like, it's really not about making like business connections, because one, you're going to stress yourself out way too much. And also, if you don't like the person, they're never going to probably help you, and you're probably never going to help them. So it's better just to find people that you like and can jive with and want to hang out with. And that's just better. Like like you said, it's making friends, and that's not always easy for everybody, but I definitely think it's less intimidating than what most people think when they think networking. So I think that is a good point that you bring up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great because you can find the people that you would see in a work environment and more casual setting that will kind of let you kind of a little bit off the brakes a little bit, or kind of ease the anxiety. Because like if you're just going to interviews and you're only talking to professionals, then you're always going to be in this kind of like high alert thing. But if you start talking to people, it's like I used to hang out with this guy from IBM, and he was crushing it at IBM, and he was the silliest dude I've ever met. But I'm sure if I would have met him in the office, I would have never known that side of him. And that way, you're just like, oh, these people are people too. That's also at the end of the day, everybody is human. Don't know why I have to say that, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah. It's something we all do still somehow manage to forget.
Mm-hmm. Some of us are aliens. Some of us are lizard people. We going down that rabbit hole?
This is true.
Oh, the Zuck?
I mean, obviously.
Yeah, the Zuck.
The Zuck. With his meats. Smoke his meats.
His people suit is getting better.
It's improving.
Yeah, he's learning how to speak like a human. It's pretty impressive.
Like a real boy?
Like a real boy.
The Zuck is just Pinocchio.
Where's Geppetto? Who's Geppetto at the point? Is that Elon or is that No, because he's fighting.
I don't know that Elon deserves to be Geppetto. I'm not an Elon.
I don't think
it's Bezos. That's who it is.
Oh God, Beesbo.
Yeah.
My fucking last name is not cool enough to. I can't ever be C-suite. My last name is just not made for it. Frank is doesn't quite do it.
It's like a law firm. If you had your own law firm, I think it'd work.
You just need to find another person with the last name Frank, and you could just have like Frank and Frank attorneys at law.
No,
Did you get in a car accident and have no insurance? Call Frank and Frank.
Did you fall down the stairs in slightly dubious circumstances? Frank and Frank will get you the best settlement in this side of the Mississippi.
I mean, maybe, I like to think I'm not dumb. I don't know who the other Frank is. I can't promise anything from them.
I'm trying to think of famous Franks. The only one I could come up with was Sinatra, but I don't think that would work probably very well.
No, maybe not as a lawyer.
Frank
See,
Zappa.
now I'm thinking about it. Oh, also, did you see, another side tangent. I'm going to make it super quick, but there's a place, this is going to be more funny, I think, for you, Aaron, because I have a weird feeling you already know about this, Josh. But in Kyle, Texas, 4 days ago, there was a national Kyle meetup of just people named Kyle. So all these people named Kyle, including this one guy I used to work with, went to Kyle, Texas for KyleCon or whatever to meet a bunch of people named Kyle. And I was just like, what the hell? He was like sending pictures. There were tons of people there. Anyway, none of this matters.
No.
So dumb. I love it.
It's they did this a while ago too, and I remember Trevor Wallace, the comedian, because he had that Kyle character that drank monsters and punched holes through walls or whatever, and so he went as a Kyle and did that whole thing. He's like, yeah, and he had like a monster with him the whole time, and he was just like being as like that stereotypical like douchebag Kyle. Not that I think all Kyles are douchebags, but it was just a stereotype that he was playing that was really funny.
That's pretty good. I'm going to have to look that up.
Let's hear it for the Kyles.
Yes. Woo! They did that with Josh, too.
Thank you, Kyle.
They didn't do it in a place called Josh, but they did it to where they'd had like a big fight. It was like, paper swords and, pool noodles. And they had like whoever won was the one true Josh or whatever.
I think I read about that.
Yeah. This is adorable. This little kid was crowned the one true Josh.
That is pretty cute. I have homework now.
That actually speaks well to Joshes at large, because there are probably some Joshes out there who are competent with a sword. Not to diminish the actual skill level of the young Josh, the one true Josh, pardon me. But, it seems like maybe there's some consideration given. Good on you, Joshes.
I've been known to wield a blade here and there.
Oh, damn. Well, I mean, that's actually perfect, because I was about to ask you for your plugs, as in what you're all about. Any fun things you want to shout out? So, maybe your sword skills, maybe your band, maybe some other third thing that I don't know.
I want to shout out, my homie, Free Tupac. I'm just kidding. Tupac's still alive though, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So I have a band. If you like screamy melodic hardcore music, I do vocals in a band called Set Adrift. That's Set SET with 2 slashes and Adrift ADRIFT. Most of us are based in Dallas. I'm here in Austin, but we put out 2 singles not so long ago, working on another one. Got some shows here in Austin and Dallas coming up in June 14th. If you're local to Austin, come on out to the Spider House. And then also I want to plug a little bit of Virtuix. Virtuix is, if you've never heard of Virtuix, we work on the Omni One, an Omni Arena. It's an omnidirectional VR treadmill that you can run and walk in VR. So it's really cool. We've got it's in beta right now, and we're going out to the general public, this year, and we're pretty stoked on what we're working on.
Nice. I didn't realize that was happening so soon. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting. It's been a little bit of a pushback because of, demands with device. A lot of our stuff's in China. We have a team in China, and so getting that shipment over here it's a process.
Yeah, it sounds probably pretty straightforward, though.
Yeah.
Very little bureaucratic red tape on that one, I'd have to imagine.
None whatsoever.
Our government has a good track record with China and TikTok and, just China in general. So.
You mean Singapore?
Oh.
That was funny. Did you watch that? We don't have to get into it, but it was funny.
No. I actually don't even... I think I might know what you're referencing, but I don't know if I know the full context.
So the owner of TikTok is from Singapore, and they kept asking him if he's from China, and he was like, "No, I'm from Singapore." And
that whole proceeding was so racist. It was bad.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible.
Oh my God.
Gotta love it.
Well,
thanks, octogenarians hired to run our lives.
That one hits a chord, Aaron.
I feel like this is gonna start turning into a political podcast.
Not if I have anything to do about it. Well, thanks for coming on, Josh. We really appreciate it. I know that we're taking some of that sweet post-work free time away from you, but thanks for coming on. We really appreciate your insight and just hanging out. And, I'll obviously see you soon, I'm sure.
June 11th. June 11th is the next Game Dev Beer Night if you're in Austin. Forgot to plug that.
You heard it here. You can also find Game Dev Beer Night on Facebook. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, radical. Even though I am not in Austin, so I will most likely not be able to attend said beer night. Thank you, legitimately from the land of corn, for hopping on the show and taking the time to talk to us. It's always a good time, and you had some grand insights, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This is always a pleasure to be able to share and get to talk to you guys.
Yeah, it's also candidly kind of a fun time for me to talk to someone from Virtuix because back in college when I worked for the university, we were in the process of trying to get one of the really early Omni treadmills for our research lab, and the process we did not end up with one, I do not think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which was a bummer. Yeah, no, I was bummed out by it.
If I was there, I would have made
All's well that ends well.
That was pre-Josh Virtuix. It's a different place now.
Yeah,
it's a whole different vibe.
I mean, also that was like 6 years ago, so it probably is quite literally a different place.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Well, hey, that aside, thank you so much, man. Genuinely appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, I hope that everybody enjoyed our show today. We know that we definitely did. And also, I just wanted to say again, thank you, Josh, for coming onto the show. We appreciate you sharing your insight and just your opinions on everything. It's always a lot of fun for us when we get to talk to people and learn more about what they do and just candidly what they think about the industry that we spend so much time talking about.
Yeah, because, I mean, even though Zach is a little bit more in the trenches of it than I am, hearing from people who are actively in development, it's just always a different perspective and a very useful one, I think.
And also, without further ado, I would just like to say eDougieArt is pretty cool. eDougieArt is who helped us with our wonderful logo, our color scheme, our text font, all of these other things that we continue to use to this day, almost 4 years later from making our podcast, which sounds really crazy when I say that out loud. But regardless of any of that, eDougieArt's great. You should check them out. You can find them at eDougieArt on both Instagram and on Etsy. So make sure to show them some love.
Yes, indeed. It will be well-placed love, in fact. And I'm here to say, do you have ears? Sure, we all do. But are your ears filled with great sounds? Well, do I have a solution for you? It's called Beach Girl. They are not only the provider of our wonderful intro and outro music, they're also the purveyor of exceptionally good digital music everywhere. Wait, that's just a terrible way to say that. Some of the music is kind of digital, but it's all just phenomenal tunes. You can find it on digital storefronts and streaming platforms scattered all throughout the internet, but you have to solve the clues. Never mind, there are actually no clues. Do just actually check them out on Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, just about anywhere that you can go to find great music to fill those lonely ears. That is, again, Beach Girl.
And with that, we would just like to sign off and say thanks again for joining us today. Thanks again, Josh, for coming onto the show. Thanks, eDougieArt. Thanks, Beach Girl, for your support. And I'll see you later.
Bye! Frank and Frank, attorneys at law.